It was a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon, the kind of day that makes you want to run outside and play. The birds were chirping, the sky was blue, and 12-year-old Timmy Jackson was in his backyard, having the best time ever. Timmy was a kid who loved simple things. Today he had a little outdoor speaker set up on the grass. It wasn't fancy, just a small black box that played his favorite songs. The music wasn't loud at all. It was just loud enough for him to hear while he danced around a little and watered the flowers for his mom. Timmy's mom had asked him to help with the garden that morning. "Timmy, can you water the flowers today?" she'd said with a smile. "They're looking a little thirsty." Timmy nodded right away. He liked helping out. Plus, it gave him an excuse to be outside in the sunshine. So there he was, holding a green watering can in one hand, splashing water on the daisies and roses and bobbing his head to the beat of his music. The songs weren't wild or crazy. They were happy tunes, the kind that make you tap your foot without even thinking about it. Now Timmy wasn't the kind of kid who caused trouble. Oh no, if you met him you'd like him right away. He was quiet most of the time, but not in a shy way, just in a calm, happy way. He always said please and thank you when he talked to people. He smiled a lot too, showing off a little gap between his front teeth that made his grin extra special. His curly brown hair bounced when he walked, and his big brown eyes sparkled like he was always thinking about something fun. All the neighbors knew Timmy was a good kid. When Mrs. Carter across the street baked cookies, Timmy was the first one she called over to try them. When Mr. Lopez needed help carrying groceries, Timmy was there with a "Sure, I can help." Everyone liked him. Well, almost everyone. Next door to Timmy's house lived a lady named Karen. And Karen, she was a whole different story. Karen wasn't just any neighbor, she was the president of the HOA. That's short for Homeowners Association, which is like a club that makes rules for the neighborhood. Karen loved rules more than anything. She loved them so much that she spent all her time looking for people who might be breaking them. If your grass grew too tall, Karen would knock on your door with a frown. If your trash can stayed out past pickup day, she'd leave a grumpy note on your porch. And if you dared to have a little fun, watch out, Karen was on the case. Karen's house was right next to Timmy's. Her yard was perfect. The grass was always cut short, like a green carpet. Her flowers stood in neat rows, not a petal out of place. She even had a little white fence that looked like it got painted every week. Karen liked things quiet too, really quiet. If a dog barked too loud, she'd stick her head out the window and yell. If kids rode their bikes past her house laughing, she'd shake her head and mutter about those noisy brats. To Karen, the neighborhood was her kingdom, and she was the boss of everything. Timmy didn't think much about Karen most days. He'd seen her around, of course. Sometimes she'd wave at him, but it wasn't a nice wave. It was more like a "I'm watching you" wave. Timmy didn't mind. He figured she was just grumpy sometimes, like how his cat got mad when he ran out of treats. But today was different. Today, Karen had her eyes on Timmy, and she didn't like what she saw or heard. See, while Timmy was watering the flowers and listening to his music, Karen was sitting in her house. She had her windows open because it was such a nice day. The breeze was blowing her curtains and she was sipping a glass of lemonade. Everything was fine until she heard it, Timmy's speaker. To Karen, that little bit of music wasn't just sound, it was noise. Loud, awful noise that ruined her perfect, quiet day. She put down her lemonade and stood up fast. Her lips pressed into a thin line like she'd just sucked on a sour lemon. She marched over to her window and peeked out, her sharp eyes locking onto Timmy. There he was, that kid from next door, dancing around with his watering can like he didn't have a care in the world. Karen's nose wrinkled. She didn't like Timmy, she never had. When his family moved in a few months ago, she decided right away that they were trouble. Why, she didn't even have a good reason. Maybe it was because Timmy's dad drove a big truck sometimes, and Karen thought trucks were too loud. Maybe it was because Timmy's mom planted wildflowers instead of the boring ones Karen liked. Or maybe Karen just didn't like anyone who wasn't as grumpy as she was. Whatever it was, she'd made up her mind. Timmy was a problem and she was going to fix it. What does he think he's doing? Karen muttered to herself, crossing her arms. She watched as Timmy sprinkled water on a big yellow daisy, his head nodding to the music. The song wasn't loud, you could barely hear it from Karen's window, but to her it was like a marching band stomping through her yard. She tapped her foot, getting madder by the second. "That's it," she said out loud. "I've had enough of this nonsense." Timmy didn't know it yet, but Karen was about to make his day a lot more interesting. She had a plan, and it wasn't a nice one. She thought Timmy was just some silly kid breaking her precious rules. She thought she could scare him, boss him around, and make him stop. But here's the thing, Karen didn't know everything. She didn't know who Timmy really was or what was about to happen. This sunny Saturday afternoon was going to turn into something wild, something that would flip her world upside down and leave her speechless. And Timmy, he had a secret, a big, awesome secret that Karen never saw coming. Picture this, Timmy, standing there with his watering can, looking so normal and happy. Just a kid enjoying his day. But there was more to him than that. Something special was hiding behind his big smile and quiet ways. Karen thought she had all the power, but she was wrong. This day wasn't going to end the way she expected, not even close. Can you guess what Timmy's secret might be? Was it something about his family, something he could do, or maybe something he knew that Karen did? Now don't go anywhere, because this story is just getting started, and trust me, you're going to love what happens next. Let's think about it for a second. Timmy seemed like any other kid, right? He wasn't loud or rude, he wasn't breaking anything. He was just having fun in his own backyard. But Karen didn't care about that. To her, he was a troublemaker, and she was ready to teach him a lesson. She thought she could snap her fingers and make him stop. She thought she was the smartest, toughest person around. Oh, how wrong she was. Something big was coming, and it was going to hit her like a splash of cold water on a hot day. The sun kept shining, the flowers kept blooming, and Timmy kept watering. He didn't know Karen was watching him like a hawk. He didn't know she was about to start a fight she couldn't win. All he knew was that it was a great day to be outside, listening to music and helping his mom. He hummed a little tune, his sneakers squishing in the wet grass. Everything felt perfect to him. But over that little white fence, trouble was brewing. Karen was ready to make her move, and when she did, things were going to get crazy. So what do you think? Was Timmy's secret something funny, something cool, something that would make Karen wish she'd stayed inside with her lemonade? Stick around, because this story is about to take off like a rocket. You won't believe what happens when Karen tries to ruin Timmy's day. It's going to be wild, it's going to be fun, and it's going to show that sometimes the quietest kids have the biggest surprises up their sleeves. Ready for more? Let's keep going. Karen was like the boss of being mad. She didn't just get grumpy sometimes, she was grumpy all the time. If a tiny leaf fell off a tree and landed on her perfect green lawn, she'd grab a pen and paper and write a long, angry letter to whoever she thought was to blame. If a dog barked just once down the street, she'd call a big meeting with all the neighbors to complain about it. Karen loved rules, and she loved making sure everyone followed them. To her, the neighborhood was like her own little world, and she was the queen who told everyone what to do. And then there was Timmy. Poor Timmy didn't stand a chance with Karen. The very first day his family moved into the house next door, Karen decided she didn't like him. She didn't even know him yet. But when she saw Timmy's dad unloading boxes from a big, noisy truck, she wrinkled her nose. When she saw Timmy's mom planting bright, messy wildflowers instead of neat little roses, she shook her head. And when she saw Timmy running around the backyard with a big, happy smile, she made up her mind. This kid was a troublemaker. She didn't have any proof. She didn't need any. Karen just didn't like people who seemed too happy, and Timmy, he was always happy. That sunny Saturday afternoon, Karen was already in a bad mood. She'd been sitting inside her house, sipping lemonade and frowning at the world through her window. Everything was too loud, too bright, too alive for her liking. And then she heard it, Timmy's music. That little speaker in his backyard was playing a song, soft and cheerful, while he watered the flowers. To most people it was nothing. You could barely hear it unless you were standing right next to it. But to Karen, it was like a giant alarm clock ringing in her ears. She slammed her lemonade glass down on the table so hard it almost spilled. "That's it," she said to herself. "I've had enough." Karen didn't waste a second. She jumped up from her chair, her face turning pink with anger. She stormed out of her house like a tornado, her arms crossed tight across her chest. Her flip-flops slapped the ground as she marched across her perfect yard, heading straight for the little white fence that separated her house from Timmy's. She stopped right at the edge and glared over the top, her eyes sharp like a hawk looking for something to catch. And there was Timmy, standing in the grass with his green watering can, sprinkling water on the flowers like he didn't have a worry in the world. "Turn that noise off, you little brat," Karen shouted. Her voice was loud and mean, cutting through the air like a whistle. Timmy froze right where he was. The watering can tipped a little in his hand, and a few drops of water splashed onto his blue sneakers, making dark spots on them. He looked up at Karen, his big brown eyes wide with surprise. The music was still playing, but it was so soft you could hear the birds chirping over it. "It's not even loud," Timmy mumbled, his voice quiet and confused. He didn't understand why she was so mad. To him, it was just a nice day with some nice songs. But Karen, she didn't care what Timmy thought. Karen's face got even redder, like a balloon about to pop. She leaned over the fence, pointing her finger right at Timmy like it was a magic wand that could make him disappear. "Don't you talk back to me," she snapped. "That racket is ruining my day and I won't stand for it." Timmy blinked at her, still holding the watering can. He didn't say anything else, he was too shocked. Karen's voice was so loud that a squirrel in a nearby tree stopped chewing its nut and ran away. "I'm calling the police," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "You'll learn to respect the rules around here, you little troublemaker." Timmy just stared at her. He didn't move. He didn't yell back. He didn't even look scared. He stood there, quiet as ever, with water dripping from the can onto the grass. But if you looked close, really close, you'd see something in his eyes. It wasn't fear or sadness. It was a little spark, like a tiny light flickering on. It was the kind of look you get when you know something no one else does. What was Timmy thinking? Why wasn't he worried? Karen thought she had him trapped, like a cat cornering a mouse. But maybe, just maybe, Timmy wasn't the mouse she thought he was. Karen didn't notice that spark. She was too busy being mad. She turned around with a huff and marched back toward her house, her flip-flops slapping the ground even louder than before. She was going to call the police, and she was sure they'd come running to fix everything. In her mind, Timmy was just a silly kid who needed to be taught a lesson. She'd show him who was in charge. She'd make him turn off that speaker and stop having fun. That's what Karen wanted, and Karen always got what she wanted, or so she thought. Back in the yard, Timmy watched her go. He didn't say a word. The music kept playing, soft and happy, like nothing had happened. He tipped the watering can again, letting water splash onto a big purple flower. His curly hair bounced a little as he moved, and his sneakers squished in the wet grass. To anyone watching, he looked like a normal kid doing a normal chore. But that spark in his eyes, it was still there. It was like he had a secret plan, or maybe he knew something big was about to happen. What was he up to? Why didn't he care that Karen was calling the police? Karen reached her front door and yanked it open. She stomped inside, slamming it behind her so hard the windows rattled. She grabbed her phone off the kitchen counter and started dialing. "Hello, police," she said when someone answered. "This is Karen Miller from Oak Street. There's a kid next door making noise with a speaker. It's disturbing the peace. You need to come right now." Her voice was loud and bossy, like she was ordering a pizza instead of calling for help. She paced back and forth in her kitchen, nodding to herself. "Yes, thank you, hurry up," she said before hanging up. She peeked out her window again, smirking a little. She could still see Timmy in the backyard, watering the flowers like nothing was wrong. "You'll see," she muttered. "The police will be here soon and then you'll be sorry." Karen thought she'd won. She thought Timmy would panic or run inside or turn off the music. But he didn't. He just kept going, calm and quiet, with that little spark in his eyes getting brighter every minute. The truth was, Karen didn't know Timmy at all. She thought he was just some kid she could scare. She thought the police would show up, yell at him, and make everything go her way. But something was off. Timmy wasn't acting like a kid who was in trouble. He wasn't shaking or crying or begging her to stop. He was fine, too fine. It was almost like he wanted her to call the police. Why would he want that? What did he know that she did? The air felt thicker now, like something big was building up. The sun was still shining, the birds were still singing, but there was a feeling that things were about to change. Karen stood at her window, arms crossed, waiting for the police to roll in and save her day. Timmy stayed in the yard, watering the flowers and humming to his music. Two very different people, two very different plans. Karen thought she was the smart one, the strong one, but that spark in Timmy's eyes said something else. It said, just wait. Ugh. What was Timmy up to? Was he really just a kid with a speaker, or was there more to him? Karen was sure she had everything under control, but that little spark made you wonder. Maybe Timmy wasn't the troublemaker she thought he was. Maybe he had something up his sleeve, something that would turn this whole fight upside down. The police were coming, that was for sure. But who were they really going to side with? Stick around, because this story is about to get wild. Karen was moving fast now, like a superhero with a mission, but not a nice one. She yanked her phone out of her pocket so quick you'd think it was glued to her hand. She punched in 911, holding the phone to her ear like it was her own special hotline. "Hello, yes, this is Karen Miller," she screeched, her voice loud enough to scare the birds out of the trees. "There's a kid next door blasting music. It's disturbing the peace. You need to send someone right now." She sounded like she was yelling at the wind, mad and bossy all at once. On the other end, the person must have said something, because Karen nodded hard and said, "Good, hurry up." Then she hung up and stuffed the phone back in her pocket. Timmy was still in the backyard, right where she'd yelled at him. He didn't argue with her. He didn't shout back or run away. Nope. He just reached over to his little black speaker, pressed a button, and turned the music off. The air went quiet, except for the soft drip-drip of water from his watering can. Then he plopped down on the grass, crisscrossed his legs, and sat there, watching Karen with that same calm look on his face. His big brown eyes didn't blink much. He didn't look mad or scared, just still, like a pond with no ripples. What was going through his head? Why wasn't he upset? Karen didn't care what Timmy was thinking. She marched back into her house, slamming the door behind her. She was sure she'd won. She called the police, and soon they'd come and tell Timmy to stop being a troublemaker. She went straight to her kitchen window and peeked out, pulling the curtain back just a little. She could see Timmy sitting there on the grass, doing nothing. "Ha," she said to herself, smirking like she'd just found a big prize in a game. "You're in trouble now, kid, just wait." She tapped her fingers on the windowsill, her smirk growing bigger every second. To Karen, this was perfect. She'd get her quiet day back, and Timmy would learn his lesson. But here's the thing, Timmy wasn't worried, not even a tiny bit. Minutes went by, slow, sunny minutes with the birds chirping and the breeze blowing. Karen kept peeking out her window, waiting for something to happen. She thought Timmy would jump up and run inside, or maybe start crying, or at least look nervous. But he didn't. He just sat there on the grass, his curly hair bouncing a little in the wind. His sneakers were still wet from the watering can, and the green watering can sat next to him, shining in the sun. He looked so peaceful, like he was waiting for a picnic instead of the police. Why wasn't he scared? What was he up to? Then something funny happened. Timmy started humming. Yep, humming. The speaker was off, but he didn't need it. He made his own little song, soft and happy, like he was singing to the flowers. It was so quiet you'd have to be right next to him to hear it, but there it was, a little tune coming out of his mouth. He rocked back and forth a tiny bit, his hands resting on his knees. That spark in his eye, it was still there, maybe even brighter now. It was like he knew something Karen didn't. Like he had a secret tucked away and he was okay with whatever was coming. What did he know? Why was he so calm? Karen didn't hear the humming from her window, but she saw him sitting there looking all relaxed. It made her mad all over again. Why isn't he scared? She muttered, her smirk turning into a frown. She crossed her arms and leaned closer to the glass, staring at him. He should be running inside by now. He should be sorry. To Karen, this didn't make sense. She called the police. That was supposed to fix everything. But Timmy wasn't acting like a kid in trouble. He was acting like, well, like he didn't care, and that made Karen's stomach twist. Was she missing something? The time kept ticking. The sun climbed a little higher in the sky and the shadows on the grass got shorter. Karen stayed at her window watching and waiting. She was sure the police would show up any second. She imagined them marching into Timmy's yard, telling him off, maybe even taking his speaker away. She smiled at that thought, picturing Timmy's face all sad and sorry. That'll teach him, she whispered to herself. She was so sure she'd won this fight. She was the queen of the neighborhood after all. Nobody messed with Karen and got away with it. But Timmy, he wasn't playing her game. He sat there humming, his fingers tapping his knees like he was keeping the beat. Every once in a while, he'd look up at the sky or over at the fence where Karen had yelled at him. But he didn't look worried. He didn't even look annoyed. It was like he was waiting for something he knew was coming. That spark in his eyes kept shining, and if you watched him long enough, you might start to wonder, was Timmy really just a kid with a speaker? Or was there more to this story? Then it happened. A police car rolled up. It came slow and quiet, its tires crunching on the street in front of Timmy's house. The car was white with blue stripes and its lights weren't flashing, no sirens, no big show. It just pulled up and stopped. Karen saw it from her window and her face lit up like it was her birthday. Finally, she crowed, clapping her hands together. She practically danced in place, her flip-flops squeaking on the kitchen floor. They're here. Oh, this is perfect. She pressed her nose to the glass, watching the car with a big, happy grin. The police were here, and now Timmy would get what he deserved, or so she thought. Timmy heard the car too. He stopped humming and looked up. The police car was parked right there, just past the little white fence. He tilted his head a little, like he was curious, but he didn't jump up or run. He stayed sitting on the grass, his hands still on his knees, that spark in his eyes. It didn't go away. If anything, it got bigger, like a tiny fire starting to glow. He wasn't scared. He wasn't even surprised. He just watched the car, calm as ever. Why wasn't he freaking out? Most kids would be nervous if a police car showed up, right? But not Timmy. What was he waiting for? Karen didn't notice how calm he was. She was too busy celebrating. She leaned out her window a little, trying to get a better look. Go on, get him, she whispered, like she was cheering for her favorite team. She thought the police would hop out, march over to Timmy, and tell him he was in big trouble. She thought they'd say, Karen's right, no more music, follow the rules. She was so sure this was her big win. She'd called them and they'd come, just like she wanted. In her mind, the story was over, and she was the hero. But something wasn't right. Timmy didn't move. He didn't hide his speaker or try to explain anything. He just sat there looking at the police car like it was no big deal. The breeze blew his curly hair and the sun shone on his face, making that spark in his eyes easy to see. He wasn't acting like a kid who'd been caught doing something bad. He was acting like, well, like he'd been expecting this, like he wanted the police to come. But why? What was he hiding? The car sat there for a moment, quiet and still. Karen held her breath, waiting for the door to open. Timmy tilted his head again, a tiny smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. That smile, it was small, but it was there. It was like he knew something big was about to happen, something that would change everything. Karen didn't see the smile. She was too busy staring at the car, waiting for her victory. But that smile, that spark, that calm look, they were clues. Little hints that Timmy wasn't just some kid with a speaker. He had a secret, and it was about to come out. What was Timmy waiting for? Why wasn't he scared of the police? Was he really in trouble, or was something else going on? Karen thought she had it all figured out, but she didn't. The story was getting bigger, twistier, and way more exciting. The police car was here, and something wild was about to happen. Can you guess what it might be? Don't go anywhere, this is just the start of the fun. The police car sat there, quiet and still, right in front of Timmy's house. Karen was at her window, her nose almost touching the glass, waiting for something to happen. She was so excited, like a kid about to open a giant present. Timmy was still sitting on the grass in his backyard, his watering can next to him, watching the car with that little spark in his eyes. The air felt thick, like something huge was coming. And then it happened. The car door opened. Out stepped a man in a blue police uniform. He was tall, with short brown hair and a big, friendly grin. It was Officer Jackson. Yep, Timmy's dad. Karen's mouth fell open so fast it looked like her jaw might crash right to the floor. Her eyes got wide and her hands flew up to her face. She couldn't believe it. Timmy's dad wasn't just any cop, he was the best cop around. Everyone in the neighborhood loved him. He was the guy who helped old Mr. Lopez fix his fence last summer. He was the one who got Karen's fluffy cat, Muffin, down from a tree just a month ago when she was crying about it. And now, here he was, stepping out of the police car Karen had called. "Hey, Timmy," Officer Jackson called out, his voice loud and happy. He waved at his son, that big grin still on his face. "Everything okay here, buddy?" Timmy looked up at his dad and nodded, calm as ever. He pointed over the fence toward Karen's house where she was still staring out the window. "She called you on me, Dad," Timmy said, his voice soft but clear. "She said my speaker was too loud." He didn't sound mad or scared, just like he was telling a little story. That spark in his eyes twinkled, like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Officer Jackson turned his head and looked toward Karen's house. He raised his eyebrows like he was asking a question without saying it out loud. "Is that right, ma'am?" he said, his voice friendly but strong. He took a few steps closer to the fence, his police badge shining in the sun. Karen's face went from pink to bright red, redder than a ripe tomato. She tried to say something, but her words got all tangled up. I didn't know, she stammered, her voice shaky. She stepped back from the window a little, like she wanted to hide. She called the cops on Timmy, thinking she'd win, but she didn't know the cop was Timmy's dad. Karen's brain was spinning. She'd been so sure she was right. She yelled at Timmy, told him to turn off his music, and called 911 like it was her big move. She thought the police would come and scare him, make him stop having fun. But now she was staring at Officer Jackson, Timmy's dad, and everything she thought was falling apart. Her hands shook a little and she grabbed the curtain to steady herself. "I did mean it was just," she mumbled, but she couldn't finish. How do you explain yelling at a kid when his dad's the one you called? Timmy stood up now, brushing grass off his shorts. He walked over to the fence, standing next to his dad. It wasn't even loud, he said, looking at Karen with those big brown eyes. I was just watering the flowers for Mom. Officer Jackson put a hand on Timmy's shoulder and nodded. Sounds like you were being a good helper, he said, his grin getting even bigger. Then he looked back at Karen, his eyebrows still up. So ma'am, what's the problem here? Karen's face was so red it looked like she'd been out in the sun too long. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. I thought he was breaking the rules, she finally said, her voice loud but wobbly. That music was bothering me. Officer Jackson tilted his head like he was thinking hard. He said, I didn't hear anything when I pulled up. Was it really that loud? Karen blinked fast, her words stuck again. Well, it was, she didn't know what to say. The truth was, the music was so soft you could barely hear it from her house. But Karen didn't want to admit that. Officer Jackson scratched his chin, looking from Karen to Timmy. You know, he said, I've been a cop around here for a long time. I know all the rules, and I know Timmy, he's a good kid. He doesn't cause trouble. He smiled at his son, proud and happy. If he says it wasn't loud, I believe him. Timmy nodded, that tiny smile still on his face. Karen's eyes darted around like she was looking for a way out of this mess. She called the police, but the police was Timmy's dad. Her big plan had turned into a big oops. The neighbors were starting to peek out now. Mrs. Carter from across the street opened her curtains. Mr. Lopez stepped onto his porch, sipping a glass of water. They'd heard Karen yelling earlier, and now they saw the police car. They were curious what was going on. Karen saw them looking and shrank back even more. She didn't want everyone to know she made a mistake. But it was too late. Officer Jackson waved at the neighbors, friendly as always. Just checking on things, he called out. No big deal. The neighbors waved back, smiling. They liked Officer Jackson. They didn't like Karen's complaining. Karen's hands twisted the curtain tight. She thought she was so smart, calling 911 to fix her problem. She thought Timmy was just a noisy kid she could boss around. But now she was the one who looked silly. Timmy's dad was the cop she'd called, and he wasn't mad at Timmy, he was proud of him. Karen's big mean trick had backfired and she didn't know what to do. I didn't know it was you, she said weakly, her voice almost a whisper now. Officer Jackson chuckled, a deep, happy sound. No harm done, he said, but maybe next time just talk to us first, okay? We're neighbors after all. He gave Karen a little nod, like he was being nice even though she'd been mean. Timmy looked up at his dad and grinned, that spark in his eyes shining bright. He'd known all along who would show up. He'd known his dad would come, and he'd stayed calm because of it. Karen had no idea, but Timmy did. That was his secret, and now it was out. This was the big moment. Karen's plan fell apart and Timmy's quiet strength won the day. She called the cops on him, not realizing the cop was already part of his family. It was funny, it was wild, and it was a total surprise. What would happen next? Would Karen learn her lesson? Stick around, this story not over yet. Officer Jackson stood tall and crossed his arms, looking right at Karen. His face wasn't mad, but it was serious. Karen, he said, his voice calm but strong, this is the third time this month you've called about something silly. Timmy's speaker wasn't breaking any rule. I could barely hear it from the street when I got here. Karen's mouth opened and she started to sputter like she wanted to argue. But it was loud to me," she said, her voice all shaky. She didn't want to lose this fight, but Officer Jackson just held up one hand like a stop sign. "Nope," he said. "Next time, talk to us first. We're neighbors, not enemies." Karen's face turned red again, but she didn't say anything more. She just stood there, huffing and puffing, mad but quiet. Officer Jackson turned away from her and looked down at Timmy, who was still standing by the fence. "Come on, bud," he said with a big grin. "Let's go grab some ice cream. You deserve it." Timmy's eyes lit up and he nodded fast. "Okay, Dad," he said, his voice happy. He grabbed his watering can and followed his dad toward the house, his sneakers bouncing on the grass. As they walked off, Karen stayed where she was, fuming but stuck. She didn't know what to do now. The other neighbors, who'd been peeking out their windows and doors, started whispering to each other. "Karen's at it again," Mrs. Carter said, shaking her head. "Good for Timmy," Mr. Lopez added, smiling. They'd seen the whole thing and they were glad Officer Jackson had stopped her. For once, Karen's big pile of complaints had crashed into a wall she couldn't climb. She wasn't the boss this time. Timmy and his dad disappeared inside, laughing about ice cream flavors. Karen turned and stomped back into her house, slamming the door. The neighborhood went quiet again, but it felt different, like Timmy had won something big. He wasn't just a kid with a speaker anymore. He was the hero of the day, and everyone knew it. And that, my friends, is how a quiet kid like Timmy turned everything upside down on a nosy neighbor like Karen. Isn't that wild? Timmy didn't yell or fight, he just stayed calm and let his secret do the talking. Sometimes the people you think you can push around or boss have way more power than you guess. Karen thought she was the big boss, calling the police and making rules, but Timmy had a surprise up his sleeve, his dad. She never saw it coming, and that's what made it so awesome. Think about it for a second. Karen judged Timmy fast. She saw a kid with a speaker and decided he was trouble without even asking or checking. But she was wrong, super wrong. Timmy wasn't a troublemaker. He was a good kid with a cool dad who showed up to save the day. So here's a little tip. Next time you're ready to judge someone quick, maybe stop and take a second look. You never know who they really are or what surprises they've got hiding. People can be more than they seem, just like Timmy. What do you think about all this? Did Karen deserve that big twist? I bet she'll think twice before she complains again. Drop your ideas in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you say. Was Timmy your hero? Did you laugh when Karen's face turned red? Tell me everything. And hey, if you liked this story, stick around. I've got more fun ones coming your way. Life's full of surprises, and sometimes the quiet ones like Timmy are the strongest of all. See you next time, friends.